Welcome to RCR Wireless News. I'm Martha DeGrasse, and I'm here with David Nowicki. He is Chief Marketing Officer at Devicescape. David, thanks so much for making the time today.
Thanks, Martha. Great to be here.
So you have been doing quite a few consumer tests related to clients on devices that bring people to Wi-Fi networks. Can you tell us a little bit about what you found and what you've done with that information?
Sure. I think this is all part of the policy on device, policy engagement sector. And I think that our product being a part of it is just a great breakthrough for us. We did a bunch of consumer testing with our existing product. We have more than 10 deployments, tens of millions of devices out there. And what we found was that rather than the product sort of fading into the background and just doing all this magic and connecting people to networks and so forth, we found that consumers really want to know what their device is doing. And I think that, as you know, we're sort of at the intersection between Wi-Fi and cellular. We have a product called Always Best Connected, and it brings together these two worlds. Wi-Fi has always been looked at as something that's sort of a manual process and kind of an alien body that doesn't really fit so well with cellular, and we solve that problem and bring it all together. So through the consumer testing, what we found was that consumers didn't really want to give up control of Wi-Fi, because right now consumers go and they figure out which Wi-Fi they want to connect to. Okay, they didn't want to really give that up. So what we did is we introduced a preference panel. And the preference panel says, do you want to prefer Wi-Fi? Do you want the best connection? Or do you want to prefer mobile? And that may change during the month depending upon where your plan is and so forth. So when we introduce this to consumers and we say, okay, now I get a preference, now I get a choice, at that point we found that they were willing to give up control of Wi-Fi and allow the operator, the service provider, to manage both cellular and Wi-Fi for them. So we have this product right now. It's called 5.0, Always Best Connected. It's in trials right now with our existing customers. It'll soon be in trial with some new prospects. And our first customer will be rolling it out here in the U.S. As soon as next month. And as it turns out, the way that this works is once the consumer selects what they want, the operator then manages to those preferences. And that's we find the best sort of marriage of roles, right, is the fact that the consumer's willing to allow the operator to manage to their preferences as long as they get a say in the matter, right?
So that's a network policy that interacts with the client.
That's right.
And where in the network is that policy managed? Do you know?
Absolutely. So the consumer is basically saying what their preference is, right? What the device is doing is it's measuring in real time the quality of LTE. It's measuring the quality of Wi-Fi. And it's also using historical information, and it's also using crowdsourced information about every location that you're in. So it knows when you're in a particular location what all the users before you that were there, what kind of quality of a connection they had on both LTE and Wi-Fi, no matter what Wi-Fi it is, whether it's carrier Wi-Fi, whether it's public amenity Wi-Fi, private Wi-Fi, we know all those quality points. And so before you're in a particular area and you want to get connected, we can predict what that's going to look like. But then even after that, we can measure it in real time and move it to where it needs to go. So in terms of policies, an operator can determine what quality levels they're comfortable with that suits them. Okay, they can determine what the blend of LTE and Wi-Fi is going to look like, what best connected means. But it comes down to really what the consumer wants, right? Because if the consumer wants more Wi-Fi, then you can naturally prefer that. Okay, so this policy. It's important that the client is involved because the client's going to tell you exactly what the quality level is of the network, right? The network can't tell what the client's actually seeing. So with the client feeding that information back up into the cloud, we analyze all that information and can produce the best possible experience. So that's why it's policy on the device, but it's also important that that works interactively with the network.
And that work in the cloud, that's a telco cloud or that's your cloud?
That's our cloud that we provide as a service. So if an operator wants to deploy our service, it's just as simple as deploying the client onto the device. They just preload the client on the device and that's it. So we're managing this cloud as a service for the operator. And so we take all this crowdsourced information, all this information about all these Wi-Fi hotspots, and we know how to seamlessly connect to all of them, right? So that's a cloud that we manage.
Okay. And you brought up carrier Wi-Fi, public Wi-Fi, private Wi-Fi. Can you give us a little bit of information about what your carrier customers are saying about carrier Wi-Fi, and if there's an increasing interest in controlling the Wi-Fi access points with the carriers that you work with?
Sure. So carrier Wi-Fi is obviously, let's say, it can be explained in a whole bunch of different ways. Probably the latest way is Hotspot 2.0, right, where it's seamless and automatic, okay? So what we're seeing is a huge amount of interest in making things seamless and automatic. But in some sense, the carrier can only control a certain small segment of the total amount of Wi-Fi. If you think about the U.S., 1 in 3 businesses in the U.S. actually offers Wi-Fi to their customers. And I'm talking about dentist offices, hair salons. I'm talking about a retailer, a cafe, a bank, a gas station. If you just kind of go down the line, 1 in 3 offers Wi-Fi. All that Wi-Fi that's being offered by all those businesses, we call amenity Wi-Fi, right? It's customer-facing Wi-Fi. That's not carrier-deployed Wi-Fi, right? And that Wi-Fi is there, and it's going to be there. It's important that consumers are coming in contact with that. We actually estimate that for every 1 connection that's made, 10 connections aren't made. So, for example, before our technology is deployed, somebody will have 35 megabytes of traffic on public Wi-Fi each month. After we deploy our technology, they have 450 megabytes per month, right? So it's about a 10-fold increase in the amount of public Wi-Fi. Same person, same plan. It just shows you how much pent-up demand there is for them to get onto public Wi-Fi. So the point is that they need to have access to all different kinds of Wi-Fi. So we call our network the virtualized carrier Wi-Fi, right? That's what I meant by there being many different definitions. Why? Because it has a quality control mechanism, because it's seamless, because it's automatic, it's monetizable, and we also have a security layer that we can actually add when needed.
Okay. And do you work with the cable companies as well?
We do work with the cable companies, and I think that they're really out there leading what's called Wi-Fi First, as you know. I think Wi-Fi First, our first customer in this area was Republic Wireless. It's a very disruptive player in the market, and a lot of people point to them as being some of the pioneers. I think, but a lot of the cable companies are pushing this Wi-Fi First concept forward, and I think that it's exciting to think about the likes of Iliad and Telenet and so forth in Europe that have actually gotten 10 or 15% market share of wireless. It's interesting to think about what if that happens here in the U.S. What if somebody's able to go into the mobile sector as a cable provider and actually get that kind of penetration? And I think that when you start to look at some of these models, you start to see with the pervasiveness of Wi-Fi that's very popular. So I think where we would come in a complementary fashion together with a cable provider. Today they're doing things like Comcast is busy with what I would call sort of club Wi-Fi, which means that what you need to be a cable customer to get access to that Wi-Fi. And if you have it in your home and so forth, you can get access in someone else's home. They have this double SSID system and so forth. So that's great from a residential perspective, right? But the business amenity side still needs to be integrated in, right? And so we're talking to a lot of the cable providers about providing a client which would integrate everything into one. And I think what's really important about that is it's not that everything is in one client, it's that the quality is being measured and controlled, and the selection is going to be done in one place. You don't want all this competition. You don't want Android, for example, competing with the OEM software, competing with the software from the service provider, right? You don't want all those things competing. You want one client which brings that all together and gives one experience to the end user, and as I was talking about before, where actually gets the end user involved.
All right, well, we'll be looking for your announcement next month with the
Thank you
North
very
American
much.
operator.